tree where chocolate comes from has had a variety of uses for centuries dating back to the ancient civilizations of Central America. Its scientific name means "food of the gods", which the ancient civilizations believed as the Mayan god Ekchu is closely linked to. The coca tree would play a large part in the ancient civilization world but was not fully realized by the Europeans at first. The Europeans, however, did help create chocolate as we know it today. The Mayan word "chocolate" means bitter water, which is where the word chocolate came from. The cocoa beans underwent a long evolution from the bitter chocolate drink to chocolate as we know of it today. The Olmec civilization of Central America is believed to be the first people to cultivate the cocoa tree. There is some debate over if the Olmecs or the Mayans were the first to use coca. However, research into their language has unveiled the word coca was used by the Olmec, dispelling any notion that the Mayans were the first original founders of chocolate. After the demise of the Olmec civilization around 300 AD, the Mayan worshipped the coca tree as they believed it was a gift from the gods. Mayan writings that survive to the present describe coca as food of the gods, as well as several ways to prepare coca, such as drinks of varying consistencies from a thin liquid to a thick paste, with different flavors. Many drawings also show that coca pads were used in rituals and ceremonies. After the fall of the Mayans around 900 AD, the Toltecs inhabited the same region. Their king, Quetzalcoatl, sailed away from his people to flee political unrest. He vowed to return to his people, and as legend held, he was a god that would later return to his people as a white-faced king to free them in 1519. This legend later became part of the Aztec lore when the Aztecs conquered the Toltecs in 1325. The Aztecs primarily used coca as a currency and a beverage. In fact, the beans were so valuable that they were the only permitted form of taxes imposed by the Aztec rulers. They believed that coca was medicine and often gave it to warriors to strengthen them for battle. Also, they believed that coca to be an aphrodisiac. Both the Aztecs and the Mayans concocted a foamy drink with the coca beans. The coca drink was found in other places such as Costa Rica and the Ganja. At the same time, the drink was often spiced with chili, honey, or vanilla. Since coca was viewed as an expensive luxury, the beverage was almost exclusively enjoyed by the elite upper class. The first European to discover coca was Christopher Columbus in Ganja in 1502, when he was offered the beans in exchange for goods of his own. He found Zogalata drink to be bitter and distasteful. He did, however, observe these almonds as currency, which confused him. He did not initially realize that the beans were edible, so he returned to Spain with some coca beans and reported their use as currency. Columbus also presented King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel with the drink, which they found distasteful as well. Because of this, Spain did not pursue importing coca beans for several decades. Columbus could not believe coca was being used as a form of currency. Dried pods were decorated and used for zocolata, which was a primitive combination of coca beans ground using stones to produce a grainy taste. The coca beans' value to Spain was soon realized, though. In 1517, Herman Cortes received his first taste of Montezuma's favorite drink, zocolata, as a part of a royal welcoming. Montezuma and the Aztecs wrongfully believed Cortes to be the return of Quetzalcoatl, according to the legend. Thus, the Aztecs paid Cortes the homage of a king while welcoming him into the city. It was too late by the time Montezuma realized his mistake, as he was taken prisoner by Cortes shortly after welcoming him. By 1519, within 2 years, Cortes has conquered the entire Aztec kingdom and gained possession of an enormous supply of coca, worth a king's, or in this case, empire's ransom. According to legend, Montezuma would consume as 50 cups of chocolate every day from a golden cup, often before visiting his harem. Coca's journey to Europe began in 1528 when Cortes returned to Spain with coca bean and all the necessary equipment to produce chocolate and serve the beverage to King Charles V. The initial reactions to the drink were mostly negative, but with the addition of sugar cane and spices such as cinnamon or vanilla, the drink began to gain acceptance amongst royals and nobles. The Spanish created molinado, a tool which made whipping the chocolate into the frothy beverage much easier. For the next 80 years, Spain had complete control of importing coca beans and began to cultivate them in other areas such as Trinidad, Haiti, Mexico, Java, and throughout the Caribbean. They were careful to protect their knowledge of working with coca to continue to reap the large profits. The coca beans were processed by Spanish monks in the colonies until 1580 when the first coca plant was set up in Spain. In the early 1600s, chocolate began to become widely popular throughout Europe. First it spread to Holland and then to Italy, Germany, Great Britain, France, and finally to Switzerland. During this period, coca was known as a clerical fasting drink, as it was a nutritional supplement that the Catholic Church allowed during Lent. It was still believed to be an aphrodisiac as well as contain medicinal and restoration qualities. The first chocolate house opened in London, England in 1657 called the Coffee House and Tobacco Road. There was a cover charge of 6 to 8 shillings to enter. An Italian scientist named Francesco Redi documented many recipes for drinking chocolate. Chocolate continued to evolve and grow in popularity. The invention of the steam engine in the 1700s made it possible to grind the cocoa beans by machine, allowing large quantities to be processed with relatively little labor, causing a decrease in price. Conrad van Houten, a Dutch chemist, invented the chocolate press, allowing for even more economical prices on cocoa. The first solid chocolate bar was created in 1847 by combining melted cocoa butter with cocoa powder and sugar, creating a paste that could be pressed into a mold. In 1876, Daniel Peter was attempting to devise a way of adding milk to chocolate but could not create a smooth mixture. Around the same time, Henry Nestle invented powdered milk while working on a formula for infant baby food that demanded milk not to spoil in storage. Nestle's powdered milk proved perfect for Peter's purposes, and the two men joined together to form Nestle in 1879. Also in 1879, Rudolf Lindt invented the process called conching, which drastically improved the texture of chocolate by making it easier to blend early in the process. The machine was a shell-shaped granite bed with rollers that moved back and forth to grind the chocolate, sugar if used, and milk into paste, the smoothest ever created. The infamous chocolate drink was first introduced to the American colonies in 1765 when John Hannu brought cocoa beans to Dorchester, Massachusetts, to refine them with the help of James Barker, who opened a processing house where the drink began to flow through the colonies. This was just the beginning of cocoa in America. Meanwhile, John Cadbury, a young Quaker, opened a one-man business in 1824 on Bull Street in Birmingham, England, to be the foundation of Cadbury Limited, now one of the world's largest chocolate producers. By 1831, the business had changed from a simple grocery shop as Cadbury became a manufacturer of drinking chocolate and cocoa. He began to rent a large factory on Bridge Street in 1847. John was joined in business by his brother and renamed the business Cadbury Brothers of Birmingham, but the partnership dissolved in 1860. John Cadbury retired in 1861, leaving his sons Richard and George, the second Cadbury brothers, to continue the business. Cadbury's aim was to persuade the poor to give up alcohol in favor of the chocolate drink. Back in America, the Ghirardelli Chocolate Company began building its reputation around the time of California's gold rush. Domingo Ghirardelli was an Italian native who was the owner of a relatively successful confectionery business. His first chocolate store was a tent, but he came to own a fleet of rivers, sloops, and buildings in San Francisco and Stockton, California, by the end of 1849. Eventually, Domingo had a factory in San Francisco at 415 to 417 Jackson Street. A discovery made by a Ghirardelli worker in 1865 was an instrumental in Domingo's factory rising to prominence, as well as revolutionizing chocolate making. A worker put a batch of ground cocoa beans and hung the bag from a hook overnight. By the morning, a pool of cocoa butter had collected on the factory floor. The ground chocolate left in the bag was almost fat-free, creating a dry powder that combined more smoothly with liquids. This became an essential ingredient in Ghirardelli's popular sweet chocolate and cocoa. The dripping bags were quickly replaced by the press previously invented by the Amsterdam chocolatier Conrad van Houten, which achieved the same result in a more controlled manner. Ghirardelli later purchased an entire block of property on North Point Street in San Francisco, which he and his sons spent the next 11 years transforming into Ghirardelli Square. Clearly, chocolate and the cocoa tree have a rich, interesting history. It took the contributions of many people over centuries to create chocolate in forms and varieties that we know today. It has only been enjoyed as a solid edible for less than 200 years, as it has mostly been consumed as a beverage throughout history. Although Spain originally controlled the cocoa plant, cultivated it around the world, and brought it to Europe, they had very little to do with the evolution of chocolate, while the Swiss, Dutch, and Americans made significant contributions to the many varieties and forms of cocoa and chocolate that everybody loves today.